Ladies and gentlemen, federal employees, today we're talking about how many TSP millionaires are there in early 2024 and the few key things that you need to be focusing on if you want to be among them. And if you are one of them, great, the few things you need to do to make sure you keep things going and keep things growing in the way that makes sense for you. So let's dive right in. First things first, one very interesting note, the largest TSP account right now has about 7.2 million in it. There is a TSP account holder who's got $7.2 million in their TSP account. Now, if you do the math, you realize really quick, it's almost impossible to get 7.2 million in the TSP just by maxing it out every year. So probably what happened was someone had a very high paying private sector position and planned something, and they moved over a good chunk of this into the TSP, and I'm sure they got growth since then, but this is probably not naturally occurring, is what I'm trying to say, right? It's probably was supported by a private sector or something, and then brought over to the TSP, is my guess. I don't know, but that is certainly my guess. Now, here's the deal. In September of 2023, there were 94,000 TSP accounts that had more than $1 million. So 94,000 TSP millionaires. Now, the TSP doesn't actually release how many TSP millionaires there are on a regular basis. They do it sporadically, okay? But just some simple math, we can deduce how many TSP millionaires there probably are as of today. So let's go through that. Number one, in quarter four, okay, October, November, December of 2023, the last little bit of 2023, the last quarter, 3 months, the C fund grew by 11.7%. Okay, 11.7%, the C fund. Now, we know, or we can deduce that most of these TSP millionaires, right, they are most likely invested in mostly stock-based things. To get to $1 million, you kind of have to be investing in the C fund, S fund, I fund, those sort of things that are going to get growth over time. It's very difficult to get to $1 million doing G fund. It's almost impossible depending on where you're at in your career. But so let's assume that most of these 94 were in mostly stock-based things, CS and I. So with 11.7 growth, they are even more wealthy, right? And so there is still at least that many millionaires, if not more. Okay, 94,000. Now, we also know that there was 96,000 TSP accounts that had between 750 and $1 million. Okay, $1 million. So those right in the next level below $1 million, there was about 96,000 accounts that were in that range, okay? Now here's the deal. If we just do some math, let's say, what balance would you have to have in September of 2023 after 11.7% growth? What balance would you have had to now be a TSP millionaire, right? We can get a guess for how many TSP millionaires we think there are. So we know you would have to have a little less than 900,000. If you had a little less than 900,000 or more, right? Let's say 900,000 on, and you had 11.7% growth, then boom, you would be at just around $1 million after 11.7% growth. So assuming you were invested in the C fund, right, and got this growth, and you had a balance of 900,000 back in September 2023, you would now be a brand new TSP millionaire. Okay? Now, here's the deal. We know there's 96,000 people that had a balance between 75,000 or 750,000 and $1 million. So let's say a quarter of them, 25%, had 900,000 or more. Okay, we don't know exactly the number. Let's assume. Let's say 25% of them had 900,000 or more. Okay, and let's assume half of those, right, were invested in the C fund, so they got this growth, 11.7%. Okay, again, we don't know exactly. These are just guesstimates, right? Just to kind of get an idea of how many TSP millionaires that have been made over the last few months. Okay, so if we do that math, we'd see there's 12,000 accounts that are most likely now added to this list of TSP millionaires. Okay, so my guess is probably right around 106,000, right? 106,000 TSP millionaires early in 2024. We don't know exactly. We'll see when we get the fresh numbers from the TSP board. They don't come out regularly. But here's the deal. There's 100,000 people, 100,000 federal employees that are just like you that have more than $1 million in their TSP. And the reason I go through all of this, to show you all of this, is to say, hey, look, there's 100,000 people out there that have done it. Okay? Many of which aren't smarter than you. Most of which aren't smarter than you, right? Being a TSP millionaire is not about being smart. It's not about being the most talented. It's simply about following the few basic principles when it comes to investing that you can control. Because here's the deal. You can't control what the C fund does. Some quarters, it's going to be this good. Many quarters, it's not going to be, right? But here are the things you can control. You control how much you put in. You control how it's invested, right? And you control not moving your investments when there is a scary market. Those are the few things you control, and those are the things that you need to focus on, okay? You should not focus on the crazy news and things that might affect the stock market in the short term. Who cares? It doesn't matter. What matters over time is you having a plan that makes sense for you and you sticking with your plan. And I promise you, I've met with so many TSP millionaires over the years, so many of them, and some of them are really smart, some of them aren't, right? Some of them aren't. It just depends, right? And they just followed the principles of success, even if they didn't understand them perfectly, and they got the results of being one of the 100 or so thousand people that have $1 million in their TSP. Now, so the odds of you having 7.2, again, that's very difficult to naturally do in the TSP, if not impossible. However, it is very possible for you to be part of the 106 if you follow the principles of success. Now, if you're retiring tomorrow and you're not at $1 million yet, you probably won't be. But if you have some time, especially if you're early in your career, there are things you can do. And even if you're close to retirement, there's always things you can do to improve where you're at, to get a little better. And I've got tons of videos about how to invest in those sort of things. So check those out if you want more details. But hopefully I give some context and some inspiration on getting out there, doing the best you can, focusing on what you can control to maximize your TSP. So I hope that's helpful. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you guys next time.